Welcome to another edition of the Radio Coffee House Show, where Jesus meets coffee meets talk radio. And the next one starts right now. All right, how's it going, everybody? Clint Armitage with the Radio Coffee House. Thanks for coming back, and thanks for listening in for another episode here in the podcast studio here in Ontario, California. All right, so today's topic is nuclear. I mean, it's big, right? We're talking about 72 minutes until nuclear death. Now, if you read the title, you're thinking like, whoa, what the heck is this about? Well, really, it's about what can happen if nuclear war actually were to occur. Is that something that we have to consider? Is that something that we have to worry about as Christians? Well, that's what we're going to find out today. We're going to be listening to an expert. Her name is Annie Jacobson. She did a whole bunch of research on what could happen if nuclear war actually happened, World War III actually happened with the big dogs, right? We're talking Russia. We're talking the United States. We're looking at a very volatile situation across the Middle East and how we're getting involved in that, supporting Israel, right? And then we're also, working with Ukraine and trying to get Russia to the table and trying to get everything done in a peaceful way. But what if it doesn't? And what if nuclear war happens? World War III, what do we have to consider? Well, one, as Christians, we don't have to dread over it. We don't have to consider it in a way that makes us worry, right? Because that's not what the Bible tells us. Jesus tells us not to worry. He's going to take care of us. However, it's still something to think about. So we're going to listen to what the possibilities are. And is there a connection in the Bible? Is there something in the Bible that says, hey, we're going to have a nuclear war? That is the question that we're going to try to answer today. So let's get to it.
I describe the first bomb in the scenario that strikes the Pentagon. It's a 1 megaton thermonuclear bomb in painstaking, horrific detail, all sourced from Defense Department documents, defense scientists who have worked for decades to describe precisely what happens to things and to humans. And it's horrifying. But on top of the initial flash of thermonuclear light, which is 180 million degrees, which catches everything on fire in a 9-mile diameter radius. On top of the bulldozing effect of the wind and all the buildings coming down and more fires, igniting more fires. On top of the radiation poisoning people to death in minutes and hours and days and weeks, if they happen to have survived. On top of all of that, each one of these fires creates a mega fire that is 100 or more square miles. And so essentially, in essence, what do you see? Well, in the scenario at minute 72, 1,000 Russian nuclear weapons land on the United States. And so it just becomes a conflagration of fire. It's just fire, fires burning, fires 200 square mile fires burning. And then we move into nuclear winter. And that's sort of the denouement of the book, where I tell you about nuclear winter from the point of view of one of the original scientists who wrote that original nuclear winter paper with Carl Sagan back in 1983. And his name is Professor Brian Toon. And he spent the decades since working with the state-of-the-art climate modeling systems that can now precisely tell us what nuclear winter will look like.
Because I've always thought, nuclear war wouldn't be that bad. If, Russia launched 1,000 of their nuclear bombs at the United States and I was here in New York where I am now, I would die instantly, so I wouldn't really know it had happened. Is that true?
I think you would want to die instantly. I mean, there's a quote from Nikita Khrushchev, the former premier of the Soviet Union, and he said, after nuclear war, the survivors would envy the dead. Because there is, right? There is this sense of if you survived, there is no more law and order. There is no more rule of law. There is no government. Craig Fugate made that very clear. The bunkers that the people in the military command and control centers would be in, let's say the secret bunkers, not the ones that are targets that Russia's going to take out, that I write about in the book, but the smaller ones, those are going to only function for as long as there's gasoline to run the diesel generators. And then those people are going to have to come out. And who's left? It's man returning to the most primal, most violent state as people fight over the tiny resources that remain. And by the way, they're all malnourished. Everybody's sick. And most people have lost everything and everyone they know. How's that going to feel?
It's going to feel, as you describe here on page 277, there are 1,000 flashes of light superheating the air in each ground zero to 180 million degrees Fahrenheit, 1,000 fireballs, each more than a mile in diameter, 1,000 steeply fronted blast waves, 1,000 walls of compressed air, 1,000 American cities and towns where all engineered structures in 5, 6, or 7 miles radius change physical shapes, collapse and burn. 1,000 cities and towns with molten asphalt streets. 1,000 cities and towns with survivors impaled to death by flying debris. 1,000 cities and towns filled with tens of millions of dead people, with tens of millions of unfortunate survivors suffering fatal third-degree burns. People naked, tattered, bleeding, and suffocating. People who don't look or act like people anymore. Across America and Europe, hundreds of millions of people are dead and dying, while hundreds of military aircraft fly circles in the air until they run out of fuel. I mean, that is some visual. How many people would be dead or dying, do you think, after those 72 minutes?
Hundreds of millions of people die in the fireballs, no question. But the number that I think is very interesting to think about comes from Professor Toon and his team, who wrote a paper for Nature recently, 2022, and sort of updated nuclear winter idea based around food. And the number that they have is 5 billion people would be dead.
Okay, so you heard that clip, right? You saw or you heard what she was talking about and how crazy it's going to be. 72 minutes until annihilation. And she's talking about, 2/3 of the population of the earth are going to be going away, and it's going to be bad. We've got these fires that she's talking about, and this intense heat, and when these nuclear explosions happen, and how everything is decimated, and all the people that have access to these true underground bunkers, these military bunkers that go way, way deep into the earth. And yeah, they're protected for a while, she says. But then when the engines run out that supply air, oxygen, all the things that they need underground, when that runs out, they're going to have to eventually come up. Now, is this stuff that we have to think about? Is this stuff we have to consider? Is this stuff we have to worry about? Well, one, we don't have to worry, but we do have to consider it because we don't know how it's going to play out. And does the Bible actually give us any insight on that? Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at a passage in Revelation. We're going to read it through, and we're going to find out how biblical is this. Now, as you know, the Bible does talk about war and rumors of wars, right? And that's actually Jesus talking about that in Matthew's gospel, about when there is going to be a war. Now, nuclear war is not as clear, but there's some things in Revelation that kind of gives you indication that maybe it is a nuclear war. So let's jump into the passage here and talk about it, and let's kind of decipher, or at least try to find out what the heck's going to be happening. Because if it happens how she says it's going to happen, that is crazy. All right, so we're going to start here in Revelation chapter 16. I'm going to go ahead and read my Bible. Yes, my beat-up Bible. That's the Bible that I've had forever. And so I'm going to read some passages in here. Again, Revelation 16. Let's start with the 7th bowl, because this is the 7 bowls of God's wrath. That's what Revelation 16 is talking about. So let's read through the passage here, starting with the 7th bowl. We've gone through all these 6 bowls, and now we're going to read the 7th bowl, okay? And here we start in verse 16. Chapter 16, verse 16. Here we go. Then they gathered the kings together to the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. The seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and out of the temple came a loud voice from the throne saying, "It is done." Then there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, pearls of thunder, and a severe earthquake. No earthquake like it has ever occurred since man has been on earth. So tremendous was the quake. The great city split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations collapse. God remembered Babylon the Great and gave her the cup filled with the wine of the fury of his wrath. Every island fled away, and the mountains could not be found. From the sky, huge hailstones of about 100 pounds each fell upon men, and they cursed God on account of the plague of hail, because the plague was so terrible. Okay. So we're going to stop there. Let's go back a little bit to the verses that I talked about here, 16, 17, 18. Now, the Bible doesn't say nuclear war, right? Because obviously back then when John wrote this book, he didn't have any idea what a nuclear war is. He was just trying to describe the things that he saw, because you can't really connect them to the things that we have nowadays, right? But this is what he says. He says in verse 18, it says, "Then there came flashes of lightning." Okay, what could that be? Could that just be flashes of lightning or explosions? Could be explosions. It says the bowl was released into the air, right? So explosions could be. And then it says rumblings, peals of thunder, and a severe earthquake. So things are shaking. And we've got this massive thunder. So there's going to be loud sounds, booming sounds like thunder, which could be an explosion. Then these flashes of lightning, which could be an explosion. I mean, it could be lightning and thunder as well, but it does fall in line with an explosion or explosions happening in the air and on the ground, because you have severe earthquakes. The earth is trembling, and it's so tremendous. Never felt that before, the Bible says. And then now let's see what else it says here. Okay, in verse 20, it says, "Every island fled away." Now, what does that mean exactly? The island moves, like it moved away, or it sunk? Who knows? And the mountains could not be found. So that's definitely interesting. Mountains could not be found. Now, if an explosion happened, if a nuclear bomb went off on a mountain, that mountain would disappear. When bombs do drop, they destroy everything. And so that could be because there's no longer mountains. The mountains could not be found. That could definitely be a bomb. From the sky, verse 21, from the sky, huge hailstones of about 100 pounds each fell upon men. Could that be a bomb too? 100-pound bombs? I don't know. I mean, now they have 1,000-pound bombs, thousands of pounds of explosive. But he's basically talking these huge objects that he called hailstones. You know, they could be pieces of a mountain. Who knows? But he's saying they're coming from the sky. And whether they're bombs or they're hailstones or they are, something from the mountains or shrapnel or something, that could be it could be any one of those things. All right. And then it said each fell upon men. And then they cursed God on the account of the plague of hail, because the plague was so terrible. So those hailstones, whatever they are obviously hitting the earth, and then people are being hit by them. And then it says, so after that, that's when they cursed God. Those images could be anything, right? They could also, could be something from a nuclear war. And if that's the case, and if she's right, where there's a massive, intense fires that go all along the earth and taking out at least 2/3 of the population. So that's something to consider as well. Now, obviously, the numbers may not exactly be right, what she's talking about, but the theme is about people being annihilated. And so when we're talking about nuclear war and the Bible, although it could be, we have to understand that who is actually allowing this to happen, okay? Remember, this is the 7 bowls of God's wrath, because he's coming to judge. And so the wrath that is coming is God's wrath. But I do want to let you know that God is in control. As you can see, when we're even talking about nuclear war, we're talking about God's wrath. These are people that are fighting against God in the final war. And so we have to really take it in and really understand God is in control. So even if it does come to a nuclear war, we're starting to see these things play out. Like, think about it. 30 years ago, We didn't understand when we read in Revelation where the mark of the beast meant you can't do any financial transactions. Or we never really thought about when the Bible talks about, Revelation talks about the two witnesses that are going to die and get raised to life. And it's all going to be seen by every tribe and nation around the world, all languages, all people are going to be able to see this. 30 years ago, we had no idea what that was talking about. So two things about the money thing, the mark of the beast and the financial transactions that that happen through that. Well, now what are we? America is actually stepping into the forefront of crypto and altcoins and the digital assets and digital currency. We are moving away from paper money and we are going to digital money. We are going to a place where it can be controlled. Now, supposedly it's supposed to be decentralized, but it's going to be centralized. It's going to be controlled because the Bible tells us it's going to be controlled, right? So we can count on that. And then with these two witnesses, when they are seen, when they're seen when they die and it's seen when they are raised to life again, that would have never been a thing 30 years ago, where everybody could actually witness this. But now with the internet, with phones, with the connection that we have with social media, I mean, we just saw it in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We just saw it. Immediately after that happened, we saw social media posts of the actual event. So this live video feed that is going to happen with these two witnesses, that's possible now. So again, all the stuff that is coming to fruition, all the things that we are seeing, we don't have to be worried about. We have to consider and we have to pray and we have to cling to the Lord. As the world continues to go more and more towards anything that is against God, we're going to have to really consider it. How do we handle that? Well, dive into the Word. Find out what it says about trusting the Lord, clinging to the Lord, and being 100% surrendered to Him so that He can work His plan through you. That's why the Great Commission is to go out and spread the gospel. Because the only way everyone can be saved from this horror, and I'm not talking about suffering, I'm saying saved from eternal damnation and suffering eternally, is us doing our job and spreading the gospel to everyone, everywhere. Like I like one of the things that a guy by the name of McGuire says. He says this, he says, moving everybody every day closer to Jesus. That's real evangelism. You don't have to be schooled. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to know the Bible and be this Bible scholar. All you have to do is every day move everyone closer to Jesus. Just express your faith the way you know how, the way you're comfortable doing, and you're going to be able to spread the gospel, and the Great Commission will continue to go forth as it should and as the Lord wants us to. So don't worry about the nuclear war. Consider what you need to do to make sure the person next to you, your coworker, your neighbor, and the people around you, your circle, make sure that they are going to be living in eternity with God so they don't have to suffer eternity without Him. My name is Clint Armitage. This is the Radio Coffee House. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for listening in. And until next time, stay safe and stay blessed. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Radio Coffee House Show, where we're all about Jesus, coffee, and radio. We'll see you next time.